In this lecture, we will see how we can create primitive objects in Maya. All the primitives can be created by going to the Create menu. We have NURBS primitives, polygon primitives, and subdivision primitives. These are the three different types of objects that we can create in Maya. Polygon is the most commonly used one. Now, inside each of them, we also have different types of primitives. That is sphere, cube, cylinder, cone, and so on and so forth. Let's look at polygon primitives. I will take this menu out as a floating menu. Now by default you will have the interactive creation on, which means if you want to create a sphere, you click on this and drag anywhere on the grid to create the sphere. For example, I can click here and drag to make a sphere. Or I can take a cube and click on first location, drag to the second location, and then I have to click again and drag up to decide the height. Now, even after the creation, we can modify these primitives, these values by going to inputs. I can click on this p cube 1, go down, and I will be able to modify the width, height, depth, and the divisions. Now, as I told you earlier, this area is called the channel box, and channel box gives us all the attributes that can be animated. If I just expand this more, as you can see, we've got two sections. Up here it says p cube 1, that is polygon cube 1, and down here we have poly cube 1, which comes inside p cube shape 1. Now inputs represents all the input connections that are going to this object. For example, now we have one single input connection, that is the creation of the object. Now why this is important is because Maya works based on nodes, meaning that every single object is comprised of two nodes. One is the transform node and the second one is the shape node. The transform node basically gives the information about the position, the rotation, and the size information, along with the visibility attribute. Now translate XYZ basically makes the object move in x-axis or y-axis or z-axis. Now these three axes can be identified with their corresponding colors. In our viewport we have a small axis gizmo, which basically shows us x-axis in red color, y-axis in green color, and z-axis in blue color. Now to access the move tool, I can go to the toolbox and click on this move button. And now this gives us the three different axes with their corresponding colors. And notice how the value of each of these axes change depending on how I move. For example, if I move it in x-axis, you can see that the translate x value changes. If I move it in y-axis, notice that the value of y translate changes. And the same as with z-axis. Now if I make all three of them to be 0, you will notice that the object moves to the origin, that is 0, 0, 0. I can also give a rotation value. For example, in rotate y, if I give 45 degrees, the object will rotate 45 degrees, and so on and so forth. Sometimes it will be difficult depending on the user to find or to create these objects in different weird locations. I always prefer to turn off the interactive creation. So the advantage is when I click on sphere, the sphere is created with the default values in the origin, meaning 0, 0, 0. And then I can move it to any location I want. Notice when I move with a particular axis, it is getting snapped or aligned to that particular axis, meaning that now I'm moving in z-axis, it won't go anywhere in x or y. At the same time, I can also click on this x-axis so that it moves only in x-axis. Now if I want to move in multiple axes, I can click in the middle and move. So that will move the object in any axis. As you can see how value is changing in all the different axes. But especially when we are working in perspective view, it is recommended not to use the center unless it is required. So let me just zero all these three values out to bring it to the center. Let's look at some other primitive objects. I'll go ahead and delete the sphere. I can click on the cube so that it creates a cube. I can push it. I'll push it out We can create a cylinder. We can create cone. We can create a plane, torus, prism, pyramid, pipe, helix, soccer ball, and lots of other things. As you can see, the primitives or the objects that we have created looks more like lines. It does not give you the 3D surface feel. This is called wireframe, meaning that it is just a skeleton or a cage of that entire structure. Now, to see this object as a shaded mode, we will have to press the number 5. We can go back to wireframe mode by pressing number 4. We can switch between wireframe and the shaded mode by pressing 4 and 5. When you do this, you also notice up here these two buttons are changing. So the first one stands for wireframe and the second one is for smooth shaded. Now let's see how we can make a simple object out of a primitive. I'm going to use only a cube to create a table. I'll start with a cube. I'll go to the input parameters, change this width and height and depth. So I'll change the width to 100. I will change the height to, I'll leave the height to 1. I'll change the depth to something like 50. Now let me lift it up to approximately 50 units. So I'll go ahead and choose translate Y and give 50. I think that's too much. I'll give something like 30. Good enough. Now I'm going to create 3 more primitives. That is 4 more cubes. So I'll create 1. Didn't show up. Okay. And I'm going to change the height to 30. And I'll move it up in y-axis 15 units so that it will be touching the top one. I'll go ahead and press 5, or I can click here to make it shaded mode. I'll give a little thickness, so I'll make the width to be something like 5 and depth to be 5. Okay, maybe that's too much. Maybe 2.5 and 2.5. It's good enough. I will move it in x-axis. I'm going to move it exactly 50 units in x-axis, so that's something like 50 here. Maybe 45, or a little less will do. I'll give 45, so that stays a little bit inside. And I'll move it to the left, that is z-axis. Let's give a value of something like, the total length is 50, so let's say something like 20. Yes, that's good enough. Okay, now I can create another cube, or I can make a duplicate of the same one. To make a duplicate, you can go to edit and choose duplicate. I can move it. Now I can also make this movement manually, but it'll be better to give a precise value. Now last time we moved it 20 frames, 20 units this side. This time we'll have to move it in the negative direction, so that is minus 20. Now this time I want to make a duplicate of both of these, so I'll select both of them, edit, duplicate. The shortcut key is Control D. Now this time I can move both of them to the negative, that is minus 45. So really quickly and simply, I have created a table based on primitives, that is just cubes. Now I can further make my table better by adding a few more cubes. So I'll create another cube. This time I want to make it longer. So let's see, I'll give width of 40, no, give a width of 2 and height also of 2 and depth of 40. I'll bring it exactly here. So that is 45. And I will lift it up. Let's say 5 units. Okay. And I'll make a duplicate of this. Control D, this time I'm using the shortcut key. Let me check if I made a duplicate. No, Control D, that makes a duplicate. And the duplicate, I will push it to the opposite side. So that is minus 45. Okay, that looks much nicer. And I can also add one more horizontal bar. So another cube. Let me make it, total length is 100, so something like 90 will do, I guess. Lift it up. Height, I'll leave it as 1. And depth, I'll leave it as 3. Okay, and I'll lift it up. So that is translate Y, give a value of 6 or 7. Okay, let's make sure that it is touching. If it is not, we'll have to bring it down. Let's say 6, I think. That should be good enough. And I want to pull it out, so I'll give a total length of not 90, 95. Let's see, yes, that looks nice. So simple table based on primitives. Now you can combine all the other primitives also the same way to create better and more complicated shapes.